What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Nuts and Bolts Sports. Raj here with Jordan. As always, we're talking the NBA returns. Really in the swing of things now with the playoffs. A lot of craziness happening. We're in round twos with a few of these series. One battle is going on right now. A really fun series, I think, that we'll discuss here in a little bit. But let's just start with what everybody wants to talk about, and that's Denver Nuggets tying the series up against the Utah Jazz 3-3. Jamal Murray, before we get to his performance, let's just start off by saying puts up crazy numbers, completely winded, incredible performance. And on the mic with Jaren Greenberg in the post-game interview, first thing he goes to is what I'm fighting for, points to his shoes. You've got George Floyd on one, Breonna Taylor on the other. Starts crying, trying to hold back the tears there on the live broadcast, but and then you see the sort of shot of him behind the locker room before the games get started, or after the games end up, and it's he's on the floor, he's kneeling down, he's emotional. We'll talk about the game in a sec, but for him to sort of have the wherewithal and the sort of presence to go out there and talk about that the way he did and as emotionally as he is, and to see what's really driving him now, I think we could probably attribute some of that to his first few games, and now with all the recent events, and he's coming out there firing lights out, dropping another 50-point game. Just incredible. What a special young man, up and coming in the league, sort of as a presence on the court, but also yesterday sort of making his stamp off the court as well. I think we'd agree on that, Jordan.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I mean, how many guys you think come off of such a great game like he played, and then to have the presence of mind at age 23 to just take a step back and talk about something that does not involve you and your performance or your team's performance or anything like that. So that was really cool to see. You could tell, speaking right from the heart. You saw the emotions, like you mentioned, with the tears, and then even before he can get back to the locker room, walking up the ramps there, he was still emotional again. So it's just confirms what we already know. This is a very serious issue that we have going on right now, and we have a lot of passion from a lot of different people and a lot of different venues around the country, but especially here in this NBA bubble. It's a very serious thing, and incredible words, and couldn't be prouder of one of the younger, more talented guys in this league.
Yeah, you said it perfectly in that, he didn't put the spotlight on himself. He put the spotlight on something that's bigger than him, and that's what the players aim to do. That's what they aimed to do when they came into the bubble. That's what sort of the most recent events in the world re-sparked the conversation again of how do we put these things in front of ourselves, as, we don't want the entertainment to subside what's actually going on, and we want to be sure to shine a spotlight on that. And for him to go out there, drop another 50-point game, and then for the first thing for him to say, and just like to see the raw emotion on him. And I had never seen Jamal Murray that emotional. You've seen him get pumped up, fired up when he's hitting big shots and slams the ball down, but for him to be tearing up, it's powerful. It's really powerful. So it was just incredible to see. But 50 points, 17 for 24 from the field, 9 for 12 from three. Doesn't matter if it was a pull up, 3-on-2 fast break, or if it was step back over Gobert in the corner. Everything was falling for him. Jokic adding another 22 and 9 assists. Jeremy Grant having a great game, 18 points. But on top of Murray's performance, I think the two standouts are Gary Harris, who returned from injury and put on a defensive show, was out there just fighting. That's all it really took. He was just fighting. And Mason Plumlee, going out there and having himself a game on, just energy, offensive rebounds, on defense, getting a bunch of steals, deflecting some passes, getting some blocks as well. He had that one where he just pulled it out of the air. Denver just looked like a completely different team yesterday. And we had talked about the sort of changes in the lineup and stuff that Mike Malone had made in the game prior. But yesterday, they just seemed to have this sort of fire and this energy that we hadn't seen in that team before. And that, too, is after they went down like 10 in the first half, 10 plus in the first half. They fought back, and then behind Jamal Murray's leadership, they took over that game, basically.
Yeah, one of the things I think we've seen here, and I'm sure you maybe agree that we thought Denver was probably done there after going down 3-1.
Oh, yeah.
Just like anybody else always thinks that. And kudos to them for not just laying down, which some teams could do. Murray's obviously been phenomenal. I think Mike Malone has made a lot of adjustments, which, whereas Utah maybe hasn't. And that's kind of been the difference. Utah has definitely kind of going with, hey, we're going to ride Donovan Mitchell and do the whole Gobert thing, but they haven't really done too much different over the last couple of games, and it's really starting to bite them in the butt. They got, like you mentioned, those kind of some of the bench guys for Denver didn't have maybe complete all around games, but whatever they were doing specifically, they were doing it well. So Michael Porter Jr. couldn't shoot, hasn't been able to shoot all playoffs, but he grabbed 12 rebounds yesterday. If you're not going to score and you're not going to be effective on that end, at least do some kind of job well. So to grab 12 rebounds for your team, that counts for something. Same thing with Gary Harris, like you mentioned, just going out there, stuff that's not going to show up in the stats. He has 4 points and 3 rebounds in 21 minutes. That's not going to, the average person, that's not going to seem like it's very good. But when you watch the game tape, you see him just chasing, hounding guys all over the court. And then, getting 18 from Grant is huge. I mean, when he can give you a 4 from 7 from 3, in addition to the other things that he does with his length and versatility, that's just a huge boost. And I mean, this is, everyone loves a game 7. I think this is going to be super exciting. Not to discredit Donovan Mitchell, he has another fantastic game himself. It's certainly not his fault.
44 points.
Blown. Yeah, 44 minutes. It's everyone's he literally almost mastered him. He was 14 to 25, 9 to 13 from 3, and 7 from the line. So it's going to be a really fun game 7. We'll see if Utah has any counter adjustments to make. There's probably some things that they could do lineup wise to at least. You can't contain Murray, but try to attempt to slow him down and take him out of his rhythm. We'll see if they do that. We'll see how these two young guys go in a game 7. I mean, and it's not to say that it's easier to score in even game 6s and game 5s, but game 7 is everyone gets a little bit tighter mentally, especially going out there on the court, that anything can happen. So I really am interested to see that matchup. There's really no other matchup that I want to see. We can say that we want to see Jokic and Gobert. We can see that we want to see, Gary Harris. I want to see these two very young, promising, talented guards in a game 7. I want to see shot for shot, and I want to see who has it, not only on the court physically, but who has it up here. That's I think it's one of those things I could probably rank these guys around the same area if we're ranking the top 30 players in the NBA. But for me, tomorrow would be a game where I would clearly put one over the other depending on how well they play.
Yeah, and I guess what we should also mention, when you're talking about who has it up here, let's not forget that Denver was up against 2 game 7s last year. They beat the Spurs in the first round, and they lost to Portland in the second round. Utah, I don't think, has quite faced that sort of test. They've never made it all that far in the playoffs, and the times that they did take steps in the playoffs, they were sort of they fell flat, honestly, and especially with this young group. And not that Denver is an experienced group by any means, but I think those couple of game 7s last year might sort of work in their favor, especially considering right now that they do have the momentum. The one big thing obviously being what Utah was doing so well is that Mitchell was going out there and getting his 40 to 50 every single night. Mike Conley, played well yesterday. He had 20, 21 points. But, the presence of Gary Harris and the sort of energy that came out of that defense. Torrey Craig had a much better game yesterday than he had in the entire series as well, offensively and defensively. And you see it sort of in the stat sheet because both Royce O'Neal and Jordan Clarkson, I think they both, one of them had 5 points, one of them had 11 points, something along those lines. Royce O'Neal is not going to be making his own shots. He's going to be playing a little bit more off the ball. He didn't get a lot of those shots that he got in the first few games because Gary Harris was hounding him. Jordan Clarkson is going to get his shots either way because he plays on ball. He likes to dribble the ball a lot. But he was missing those shots yesterday, shots that he was making a lot of in the first few games. And it just, it's a testament to the defensive effort of Denver, but they also do have that momentum carried into game 7. I'm a bit hesitant to sort of say that I think Denver has got it wrapped up because I think that it's going to be a real fight. I think both teams are going to put their lives on the line. I think it's pretty obvious that we're going to see a real intense battle, maybe the best game of the playoffs that we've seen so far. The one thing that if you're watching Inside after the game, Shaq and Chuck were going after Utah because they weren't double teaming Murray. And it's just I don't think that's the right call here because Denver has enough talented scorers to where those guys are not really going right now. They're not rolling, but if Jamal Murray's double teamed and Nikola Jokic does get rolling, and he's not having great games and he's still dropping 22 and 9. If he gets rolling, that could put Utah in even more trouble. I want to get your sort of thoughts on that double team perspective because Quinn Snyder is one of the best defensive coaches in the league, so he knows what he's doing out there. I don't necessarily know if I trust Shaq and Chuck to tell Quinn Snyder what to do when it comes to coaching.
Yeah, but I mean, and you're right. It's hard. This isn't like 8th grade AU where you can clearly double the best player on the floor and then make
Hmm.
his teammates beat you. Like, it's just not that simple in the NBA. Guys are going to make wide open shots. I mean, you take away Murray, so they were Murray was 9 of 12 from three. You take away his numbers, and Denver still shot 9 of 24, which is like, I'll take that. Like, if that's in the game seven, I would
Solid, yeah.
live with that. You
That's
had
solid, yeah.
Jokic was 3 of 5, Grant 4 of 7, and honestly, they got lucky. The Porter Jr., Craig, and Harris were the ones that struggled. They were 1 of 9 combined, but any one of them could get going in a game seven, especially if they're open. So I could see, I could definitely see that backfiring in Utah if they do that. I wouldn't recommend doing it. I definitely think they should do something, whether it's like maybe not so much double, maybe like blitzing him on those screens, like forcing him to just like panic and give up the ball, and then like a Gobert, whoever like is the guy hedging out and trying to ice that, then they can quickly drop back so you're not like out of position and scrambling. But then that'll be fun to see how Denver counters that, because that's always the game that I think we play. You see with James Harden a lot. You see these other guys, like when they get doubled or iced really quickly, they start
Yeah.
to make the adjustments of like quick passes and cuts, or they hold on, maybe he'll hold on to the ball or something like that. But it'll be interesting to see. Again, we're going to see two, I think, pretty good coaches
Yeah.
try to outmaneuver each other here, and yeah, Jokic is another point too. Like he's, his numbers are good for like below level players, but like for him, like these aren't quite the numbers in the overall game that we're used to seeing from him. So if he can turn it on in
Yeah.
game seven, that'll be really huge too.
Well, the Gobert thing in particular, I mean, Utah has been doing that this series. Just the difference is that Gobert's fallen off. He also only had like 11 points yesterday, and he just wasn't hitting shots. And defensively, Denver was better on him, especially when Plumlee was in the game. They contained him, and he was just
Mm-hmm.
not getting easy rolls to the basket. He was still trying to do the same pick and roll thing. He just wasn't getting as easy as he was the past few nights. And that could be a testament again to Gary Harris, because it sort of stops the penetration coming in from the wings. It makes everything sort of bunch up, and it doesn't open up the lane for Gobert to go and attack the basket. So that is going to be an interesting to watch for Game 7. I really think it could swing either way here. If Utah shows up and is the same team that they were, nights before, we could see a very tight battle. But if Denver has the momentum and they're going to carry it into the next game, I just if Jamal Murray is rolling this way, I just don't see how Utah can beat him. It looked like you were going to say something.
I was just gonna ask, like, can we get a prediction? We'll go. You go ahead, give yours. I'll give mine.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull in my family ties to the Denver Nuggets, and I'm gonna say they pull it out. I think that Jamal Murray is clicking. Jokic is gonna put something together. I think in Game 7, they've been there. I think they have a little bit more experience than Utah. I think they have it. They have the momentum. I don't know if there's much more to say than that.
Yeah, I agree. I was trying to look beforehand to see if there was like a way I could make the argument for Utah, and I'm sure that don't remember there's still a world where they can come out and win this series. I wouldn't be like stunned if that happened, but I think Denver having the momentum, Utah mentally they have to be reeling right now and thinking like, oh my god, I thought we
When you
had these
saw
guys.
they're kicking the chair, Donovan Mitchell smacking stuff as he walked into the locker room, they are not in a good space right now.
Exactly, and I think Mitchell will be fine, but I don't trust necessarily. Like Mike Conley's been better in the bubble. I don't know if I trust him in a game seven. You have Gobert, who for the numbers he was putting up earlier, like think about it, he's not a shot maker. He just gets these lobs and easy rolls to the rim. Like he can't create his own thing.
No, not at all.
We'll see if like a Jordan Clarkson can step up in a big moment. Like he's been doing well when Utah's been rolling, but like when the chips are down, we'll see. So I just don't think they have necessarily the big game players. Plus, like you mentioned, Denver has been in some of these big game sevens dating back to last year. Plus, I think of the two, Murray is just a little bit more hot, and that may end up being the difference. So I'll go Denver by. We'll go 5. I think it's gonna be really tight. Yeah, it's gonna be a really fun game. Who doesn't love Game 7?
It's going to be so much fun. Pull out Zaza Pachulia. It's ready. Are we ready? Game 7. I wish I had the clip pulled up so I could like cue it up right here. I'm not that much of a professional on StreamYard, so I'll save it for next time. Let's go ahead and talk about Clippers and Lakers both moving on to the next round. Let's start with the Clippers because they won yesterday against beating Luka 38-9. Dallas going out still on a pretty high note, despite the fact that they had all the injuries and whatnot. I mean, there were reports coming out that Dallas is not even really considering a playoff run in this season being a potential option. They were kind of looking towards next year as being the year that Luka was going to make that leap and really contending, making some extra moves in the offseason. But they outperformed and in a spectacular way. But, Paul George continuing to sort of have better play than we had seen in the sort of first stretch of the bubble. Kawhi Leonard still, firing on all cylinders. You just can't beat that Clippers team when you're as young and as inexperienced as that Mavericks team. When you're missing one of your key pieces in Kristaps Porzingis, I think that did definitely swing the series. I don't know if Dallas would have won, but I think they could have maybe pushed to 7 games. That obviously didn't happen, but I think it was one of the most fun series that we've had so far, at least.
Yeah, I mean, it lived up to the hype pretty much, like we talked about it being, our most anticipated series of the first round. And maybe Denver, Utah going to a game 7 has probably surpassed that. But, the Clippers and Mavericks, it was fun. We had, you had a Luka Doncic buzzer beater and his coming out party here in the playoffs. You had Kawhi being just an absolutely quiet, dominant player, like he always is, averaging like 33, 10, and 5, like astounding numbers. Like if he was as loud vocally or like off like social media as like LeBron, Durant's, Curry's, those guys, like the Twitter would have been going nuts. But like I feel like I never saw anything about Kawhi dominating. But just another day at the office. Paul George was better. He didn't shoot very well yesterday, but he played. He did better. Yeah, he did all the other things. He played good defense. He moved the ball well. He had 7 assists. Like you'll take that. It was tough for Dallas. Like I said, you don't know if Porzingis swings the series, but it definitely makes it more interesting. I think we could have been looking at a game 7 still with the Clippers win, but it would have been that much closer for Dallas. It's just tough with just Luka, and Luka was phenomenal yesterday. There's nothing that Luka did wrong really per se. But you're not going to win a game. It's kind of one of those things like when you sit back and look at it, we're blinded by the Luka, right? It's all we see is like Luka's doing this, Luka's doing that. We love Luka. He's our prodigal son. Marcus Morris, don't you dare touch him again, type of thing. But when you look at the lineup from yesterday, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. There, if you had to pick, technically Tim Hardaway Jr. is like their second best scorer. And that's just not going to win you a playoff game. I don't trust Tim Hardaway Jr. at all. Trey Burke hit the wall. Maxi Kleber didn't shoot well the last couple of games, so they just came crashing down. They definitely have some things they have to look at in the offseason. They don't have a lot of cap room, which is going to make it tough. But we'll see. Like I don't know. I feel like they're going to be like sneakily make a move, whether it's like here take a draft pick of ours, but you got to take Tim Hardaway Jr. to clear up cap space or something like that.
Yeah.
But we'll see. The bottom line is like, look out. Like Luka's here. He's going to be a perennial MVP candidate for the next decade, and that's been the most fun thing. And so they have nothing to be ashamed of for sure. It was a good series for them, and the Clippers now move on. The one thing I do want to touch on that I know we had talked about, people have been flip flopping. Was the Marcus Morris play dirty? He came out after game 4 or whatever, after the ankle thing, and said, "I don't come here to hurt anybody." And then this happens again. Sorry, dude. This is 3 times in a series because he technically got involved in the Porzingis thing too. Like I saw
that was very much Morris's doing when Porzingis got tossed because he knew exactly what he was doing, jostling Porzingis.
100%. And like wasn't so much dirty as just him like doing his thing.
Yeah.
But he definitely was in the vicinity of Luka's ankle on purpose. Game 4, whatever it was.
Oh yeah. And then Euro stepped onto it.
Yeah, it was stupid. And then I watched the play yesterday. Like I always try to give guys the benefit of the doubt because a lot of times they do go for the ball. And I think the refs don't see that. He wasn't. He may have gotten part of the ball. I think that was like the argument. But
the first hand was, but that second hand when he like karate chopped him on the head, that was not a basketball play.
And don't get me wrong, like Luka did the little European thing and sold it a little bit. Like he hit the ground hard, but like it was still a dirty play, and I don't like to see that. Especially with our prodigal. That's our son. That's like our Simba. Like you don't come after him.
Yeah.
So just you don't like to see that, and unfortunately that's how they play, especially with him, Beverly. I mean that's like a whole school. Him, Beverly, and Harrell. I mean that's just like the 3 of them just probably get together each game. Like all right, who's gonna rile up the other team's best player? But I do love that about Luka. He's so feisty. He was ready to go at him until Buffon grabbed him. I do love that. That's what separates Luka from like all the other big name foreign guys that we've seen. Those guys like they get whiny. Luka gets pretty pissed. So I do like seeing that. But yeah, we'll see. With Clippers move on, they're going to wait to see who plays, and then of course my Lakers finally moved on for the first time since 2012.
Yeah.
Raj, what were you doing in 2012?
Probably supporting LeBron like I am right now, so I can brag a little bit about the fact that the only thing I'm bragging about here is that the Lakers took it in 5 games, and I'm standing by that. But I was probably I probably wasn't supporting LeBron because he was in Miami then, and I was. So let me walk that back here. I don't know what I was doing in 2012.
I was a senior in high school.
Okay, I guess I don't even know when I was junior. I think.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't remember. Honestly,
It's been that long.
it's been a while. It's been a while. But yeah, it has been a playoff drought for these Lakers. Obviously in Kobe's last seasons there, also they were not a good team. They were
Right.
not making playoff runs, and now even last year, with LeBron sitting out a quarter of the season, they couldn't quite put the pieces together. But yeah, it was exciting. It was exciting to see the Lakers put it together. I know the last game was a bit sloppy, but for the rest of the series, started off bad, ended bad, but they still ended with the win. The middle part of the series, they looked really good, and I'm still not really concerned about this Lakers team because I understand that people are frustrated because Dame wasn't playing in that final game, and the Lakers didn't look like the team they had looked like in the previous few games. I think it was just sort of a mental lapse. I don't think it's gonna come into play later rounds, especially in the next round when they have to face somebody, either a Chris Paul or more likely a James Harden or Russell Westbrook. They're not gonna go into those games unfocused. LeBron especially is not gonna go into those games unfocused. I don't see that being an issue, but I'll let you sort of take the baton since you are the Lakers guy here.
Yeah, you could not have told me on Saturday night that the Lakers, it was just a mental lapse. If you were here watching the game with me, I would have had to have been censored the whole game. I was pretty frustrated. But at the end of the day, I was like, okay, like no Dame, like it was a classic like letdown for 3 quarters, and then they kind of took over. But they did, like you said, in the middle of the series, they really asserted themselves, especially LeBron and AD. They were really really good in those 3 games. Plus, they had some outside shots. Caldwell Pope got going. Mm-hmm. Danny Green finally got going. Alex Caruso, the plus minus god, was doing his usual stuff. So they played better. Like you said, I think probably looking at Houston in round 2, which is going to be. I personally, like I said all year, that like, as soon as they started that in February, March, I said they were going to win games up front, and technically they still have because they didn't play that many games with the small ball lineup before the bubble. So they're still kind of riding off the whole gimmick thing, and that's what it is. I think it's a gimmick. I think it's a cheap form of Mike D'Antoni just trying to. In fairness, like that's all he's got, so he's doing like the best he can with what he has. But it'll be interesting. It's another series of matchups. Instead of Dame and CJ, they get replaced by Russ and Harden. You have an explosive guard in Russ who will really make you pay at the rim, and more so than Dame and CJ. And then you have Harden who's going to look to manipulate him and LeBron. That's gonna be, they're going to try and manipulate every offensive possession in their favor. Yeah, and I think that's going to be something to see. Obviously, it's like who's going to guard those two for Lakers, and then for Houston, how are you going to keep LeBron? Tucker and Jeff Green, those guys, they have a lot of like lengthy bodies, but I don't know if they're necessarily like ideal guys to try and really stop LeBron. And then AD should have a field day. I mean, I can't. He should probably average about 30 and 15. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. Like, if he doesn't grab 15 rebounds in the series, there's a problem.
Yeah.
But there's some matchups to look at. Like, can you play Dwight Howard and JaVale more than 20 minutes combined in the series each game? Probably not, but we'll see. We'll see if anyone can stay out of foul trouble. And then on the other end, like, can Houston make their threes? This is the time every year. We're just a little bit later in the year because of the break, but this is every year we wonder, is James Harden tired? Are the shooters, are they going to run out of steam? Are they going to go cold? You go cold for 2 games against the Lakers, and they go down 2-0 or 2-1 or something like that. Trying to beat LeBron and AD 4 out of 5 or something like that. That's not something. That's not a position anybody wants to be in. No. So it's going to
be. We saw that with Harden a little bit in this OKC series too.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Dort's, his last game he didn't, but Dort's done a pretty good job on him. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. We'll see if Houston runs any kind of zone at all, because Portland did that for a little bit, and it seemed to screw up the Lakers too, because they're not a good outside shooting team, and they don't. LeBron moves the ball well. The rest of the guys don't. So it's going to be interesting to see, the counters that are made. I still feel pretty good about the Lakers. Advancing and probably I would say 6 again. That's what I picked in round 1. I think 6 is pretty fair for round 2. But Houston still has to get it done. Houston's been there before. We've seen Houston with a 3-2 lead. And don't get me wrong, it's not the Warriors on the other side with Steph and those guys. But, OKC's going to come out. They're going to play better than they played. That Lou Dort's not going to take 9 shots in the first quarter. Chris Paul's going to have a better game. Danilo was terrible. Like the stuff that happened there is not going to happen again. So it's going to be a big fight. And if it's a game 7, that only benefits the Lakers because all their older guys get to rest. LeBron's just getting to work out and rest. Dwight Rondo gets a little bit healthier. Not saying he's like an impact player, but maybe he could see a couple minutes and at least use his IQ. So there's a lot of things to see here in the next 2 or 3 days. So we'll see what happens.
Is the Rondo coming back at all a key actually in this series? Because I'm thinking about matchups, and you're obviously not going to have LeBron playing defense on either Harden or Westbrook to conserve his energy. I imagine maybe you start Danny Green on James Harden.
Mhm.
But who do you start on Rondo then? Are you going to put KCP on him? Because I don't
On
like that
Russ.
matchup. Or sorry, on Russ. Yeah, I don't like that matchup.
Um,
Not that Rondo is like an elite defensive player the way he used to be back in the day. But I think he can probably handle Russ better than anybody else that's active on LA's roster right now.
yeah, so I've been thinking about this all day, and I forgot to bring it up a minute ago. The way this is how I would handle Houston. And teams, I wish teams did this more with LeBron back in the day when he was like really at his physical peak, because especially like Harden's not afraid to shoot like a lot. LeBron's always kind of been like, hey, I don't want to like take more than 25. I want to get everybody else going. I would almost use the strategy of single cover Harden with Caldwell Pope. Whatever happens, happens. If Harden scores 50, he scores 50. But don't help that. Houston's dangerous is when Harden gets by his first man, they over rotate, and then the ball swings and swings, and then there's four guys around the perimeter.
PJ Tucker corner shot or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not saying like let Harden walk it in for a layup every time, but like do the best you can on him. Try not to help too much to the point where you're giving open looks, and make Houston, make Eric Gordon shoot a bunch of contested shots. These guys are used to wide open threes. Make life difficult. Let Harden do his thing, because who's going to also want to shoot a lot? Russ. Russ isn't going to be like just going to watch Harden shoot 35 times a game. Like he's going to want his share, and I'm fine with Russ shooting. I think Russ athletically he looked pretty good for all things considered in Game 5. But I didn't, he's been waiting all this time to come back, and now you got to get the legs underneath you for the jumper, which has already pretty much never been there. So that's going to, for as explosive as Houston can be on offense, I think Westbrook coming back, at least for these first 2 or 3 games, it's still an adjustment. Like he's still got to work his way back into the lineup with these guys that have been playing together for the last 2 weeks, and he's got to get himself back there in game shape, especially trying to hit shots. So I'm okay. Like if Russ takes 20, 25 shots, as long as he's not around the rim, I can live with that. If Harden is living out, don't put Harden on the foul line. Don't fall for the flops and the reaching in, because if you reach in on Harden, the arms are going up. He's going on the foul line, and he's mastered it, for better or for worse, for however much I don't like it and how it affects the game. That's what he does. So if they can kind of mentally be sharp and not fall into those tricks, I think the Lakers will be okay. But it is interesting, like you said, they could start Danny Green on him, but then that kind of leaves Russ. Like Russ would abuse Caldwell Pope. Like I would post up Caldwell Pope with Russ if I were the Rockets. But we'll see what happens. I imagine. I mean, they can do a lot of switching. Like the Lakers, theoretically, if they go small and put the bigs on the bench, except for AD, they can switch everything with AD at the 5 as well, and at least make Russ and Harden shoot over his length and athleticism. So we'll see what happens. But Houston's got to take. I'm still not sold. Houston's going to take care of business tomorrow. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not either. We will. Yeah. We will see what happens there. I'm also interested to see what happens. I think it could at least go to a Game 7, and that would also give the Lakers a little bit more rest time. So we'll see what happens, but we'll be sure to update you guys. I do want to close out the Western Conference discussion saying I still have not received an apology from anybody on my Lakers predictions. So I'm still waiting. My Twitter handle's right there. So be sure to reach out and let me know that you're sorry. Let's get into Eastern Conference. We got one matchup under our belt. Another one's going on right now. Let's start with Boston-Toronto. Boston taking the win. Surprising win, I think. Sort of a bit of an upset there. When you look at sort of the box score of that game, and even if you watch the game, like, on paper and sort of seeing it all manifest, it was just such a balanced effort from Boston. Multiple guys going for 15 to 25 points for Boston, whereas Toronto, the guys that they rely on, that they usually get a balanced effort from, just weren't there. Van Vliet was not great. Pascal Siakam was not great. Kyle Lowry was the only one that played solid, but even that, he was just okay. He was middling. It was pretty much a beatdown from Boston, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, Boston played pretty well. I wouldn't say they played a perfect game, but they still played about as well as you could expect, having some time off and going up against the defending champs. And Toronto, they just didn't bring it. I don't know, call it too much rest time, call it just not. It wasn't their day. Like Van Fleet and those guys, I thought they missed a lot of shots that they normally make.
They were not good. Yeah.
No, yeah. And some days the ball just doesn't go in, and there's nothing you could do about it. I don't think we're going to see that kind of performance again from Toronto. I imagine they're going to come back very motivated, and I think they have a good chance to even up this series. With that being said, they definitely have some things they need to work on. Like, Siakam seemed like he wasn't quite getting where he wanted to. Brown and Tatum were definitely bothering him.
Tatum was doing an excellent job on him.
Yeah, Tatum's. I feel like we've talked about it enough now, where it can be like you don't have to be like, oh, he's sneaky good on defense. Like he is very good on
He's
defense,
really good. Yeah.
and Brown does a very good job. Smart, like those guys, they're pesky and they're going to make you work. I think Toronto realized that they're going to have to work for a lot of buckets in the series, and maybe they thought they'd have an easier time. But yeah, I mean, the fact that Boston also got 18 and 10 from Kemba, like if you're Toronto, like that can't happen again. Like you can't, like not that Kemba's a scrub. That's not what I'm saying. But the general rule of thumb in the playoffs for me is always like, don't let the guys that should. Like Kemba is good, but like against Toronto, Lowry and VanVleet should be able to slow him down. He shouldn't be having 18 and 10. Like that's unacceptable if you're Toronto. And like I said, you just want to make a couple more shots. And get some stops on defense. They allowed a lot of open threes to Boston, and Boston missed some of their own. Like in fairness, it probably could have been a worse blowout. So there's definitely some things to clean up for them. The one thing I will say, just because you know me, I go off I don't go off the stats. I go off all the weird stuff. Yeah. I saw the video. Fred VanVleet's kids came into the bubble today, and they had a big hug in this video. So expect a big game from Fred VanVleet. I'm talking 30 points.
Well, also, let's not forget when VanVleet had his last child, that was when he sort of went on that crazy tear and was like
the dad strength
level. Yeah.
Yep. So I expect a big game from him, and I just expect overall better effort and better playmaking from Toronto. Nick Nurse and those guys, they'll have them ready.
And the shots, that is a big thing because those will eventually start to fall, especially when you have as talented shooters as Toronto does. Somebody like a VanVleet will find his rhythm. If it takes his kids coming into the bubble, then that's what it's got to take. He will get there. Something that we talked about, we honed in on Kemba, I think, when we were predicting this series, and we talked about the fact that bigger guards like Lowry and VanVleet who are good at defense would basically just like beat him up, bully him, basically, and they did not really yesterday. Like you said, Kemba was pretty good. Overall, all things considered, the way he's been playing and whatnot, coming off the injuries and all that stuff as well. He was pretty solid, so you do have to give him some effort there. I would, if I was a Toronto fan, I wouldn't really be worried at this point. I think it was just a game one sort of. They dropped it. They dropped game one to Orlando last year. It's not that big of a concern.
They've notoriously been kind of bad game ones.
Say that again.
They've been like notoriously kind of bad game ones over the years.
Yeah, exactly. And even against Brooklyn in the first round, like they were a little bit up and down there. They had some beatdowns, and then they had a little bit tighter matches that they sort of had to run away with in the fourth quarter. But I wouldn't be too concerned as a Toronto fan. I think they will be fine. Nick Nurse is coach of the year. Nick Nurse is going to make the adjustments that he needs to make. Pascal Siakam and Jason Tatum is actually a really fun matchup. I was kind of anticipating that, but not quite as fun as it was in the first round, even though Jason Tatum got the best of him. I'm expecting that.
Siakam picked up 3 fouls in the first quarter. The third one was, he shouldn't have jumped out as far, but I thought it was really tic-tac. So like that also hampers your game too. When you're sitting on the bench at the end of the first quarter with 3 fouls, you don't play a lot in the second, and then you have to still be cautious on defense the rest of the way, because each time you pick up another foul, you're one step closer to 6. So like that, all the little things that went wrong could have gone wrong for Toronto in the first game, especially early on in the game.
Sure.
And I don't see that happening again. I think they'll be much more just compact. I think we'll see the usual Toronto defense out there just harassing people. I think, I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout or anything. I would take Toronto by 4 to 6 points, but I think they can steal game 2 here.
I think that's what we're going to see, and it's going to be a tight one. We talked about that quite a bit, that it was going to be a good series, and it'll be hard fought. The other conference, Eastern Conference matchup that is also going to be tight and very hard fought is Miami-Milwaukee, which is going on right now. Looks like Milwaukee is up 73-70 according to NBA.com.
Yep.
That's a really interesting matchup as well. We talked about how fun that was going to be on last time's podcast. I think the big question is the combination of Jay Crowder, Jimmy Butler, and Bam. Is that enough to stop Giannis? I think that's the biggest thing. That's what Miami has to do, is they have to stop Giannis. Chris Middleton, I think he's playing solid right now, but he had a struggle in the first round. You jinxed him a little bit. That was the one prediction you got wrong. That was the one. But I think it's going to come down to whether or not those guys can contain Giannis, because obviously those guys, I think that combination of players can contain Giannis better than anybody else, maybe in the Eastern Conference, because Boston doesn't have that big guy that can sort of stop him at the rim the way that Bam can. What's your sort of thoughts on the way that series is going to look?
Yeah, first off, let me just say I kind of set Middleton back for a second, but we're fine. We're good. I'm back on track. For those of you wondering, Middleton is 10 of 15 from the field. He's got 23, a game high 23 right now.
Okay.
So we're back. We're fine. But no, it is that's going to be the matchup is can the Bams and the Jimmies and Crowders and Iggy, can those guys just form, as Stan Van Gundy said, a wall essentially and try to contain Giannis. You don't no one he gets anywhere near the rim. It's a two-step from the three-point line, Euro, and he's laying or dunking. We've seen that so many times. So can they contain that enough, kind of like Boston did last year, and then or two years ago? Yeah, anyway, 2 years ago they did it. But can they build their own, and then can Miami hit enough shots? That's gonna be the thing. They're not a great outside shooting team. They have great individual shooters like Robinson and Hero, although Hero is really struggling tonight, and even Dragic has been really good too. Mm-hmm. But like Jimmy's not a great outside shooter. Iggy can come and go. Adebayo is not known for, but the thing is, like Jimmy, Bam, and Iggy, like those are three guys you'd probably have in the last 3 minutes of a game, right? That you're really trying to win.
Yeah.
We'll see. Like Crowder's been usually pretty good, and then but like Duncan Robinson and Hero, like they're going to be the best shooters, but like they're not going to play necessarily a whole lot of crunch time, especially together, because that's two guys that really can't play defense, and they already have Dragic, who's like he's just an okay defender. So that's going to be interesting how Spoelstra manages that and who steps up from some of those other guys to make shots. They're hanging in there now, like you said. They're only down 3. Giannis is having an okay game. They seem like he's only taken 7 shots, so it seems like they are deterring him. And from what I watched, they've been really obviously trying to hone in on him. But then on Milwaukee's side, it's obviously it's going to be, I think, the guards. It's going to be the George Hills, the Wesley Matthews, the Middleton is more of a forward, but I think he's going to be fine either way. But like Bledsoe, like this is the time every year where Bledsoe kind of starts to stink, and everyone looks at each other like, "Wait a minute,
he's not even playing today, right? I think he's
out. He's out. Yeah, he's out. He didn't want to bother with game one. He was going to stink. But yeah, we'll see. I think it's going to be a fun series. I talked about it last week. I said it was very interesting that Miami got with the Milwaukee with everything that happened on Wednesday and Thursday. They have so much extra time. Miami has so much time to study and watch film and rest and get healthy and be good to go. So this is a fresh Miami team that Milwaukee's facing tonight, and they're not going to back down. They have, for lack of a better word, some dogs. And like I say that positively.
Yeah.
Like Jimmy Butler is a dog that you want to be in the foxhole with. Adebayo, from the day he took his first Miami workout where they tried to challenge him, like he's a dog. Like, I would not want to mess with these guys, and they're not. I guarantee you, like they have no fear of Giannis. They have no nothing. Like they're not like over there like, oh crap, how are we going to stop them? Like they're walking out there like, we got it. Like we'll take care of it. Yeah. So that's a dangerous team with a great coach in Spoelstra. It's going to be this rest of this game. I think is going to be really fun. I don't see it straying more than a couple points each way until the very end. Mm-hmm. And there's no home court. Like Milwaukee, doesn't have. This is where you start to see some of those higher seeds. It kind of stinks that they don't get to play in front of their fans, at least right away. And so we'll see how Milwaukee's able to respond. They've been here before, and they haven't gotten it done. So the clock is ticking. The one thing I do want to say, just as a quick fun point, I know we're almost done here. When the Bucks beat the Magic, Jeff Van Gundy had one of the funniest quotes of the bubble, where he said, for any team, like any minute here, they could be done, and next thing you know, you're out of the playoffs and you're leaving the bubble. And it's like, for the Magic, you could be home in 45 minutes. And then they said Markel Fultz lived 10 minutes from the bubble. He literally lives 10 minutes in his apartment. I was like, oh my God. I was like, he'll be home for dinner. Because it was like 6 o'clock. So just want to give. I don't really care for commentators that much, but that was
SVG's been so good. He's been so good on the call. I'm loving having him on those broadcasts.
They were good. I wanted to end on a funny note.
He's on this one right now, the Milwaukee-Miami game. So I'm excited to close things out here. One other thing we do. Actually, what's your official sort of prediction? Mine is Milwaukee in a hard-fought 6.
I still think Toronto. I think Toronto in 7. I think based on what we saw in game 1. I know we're kind of cheating with that one. For this game tonight, it's weird because all the East series were like duds. They were sweeps or 4-1. Yeah. But I think we could have 2 possible 7-game series. Mm-hmm. If Miami makes enough shots, they could lose in 7. Mm-hmm. If they don't, which I don't think they're quite going to make enough, I think Milwaukee wins in 6. But it's like a really close 6. And you're going to look back and be like, wow, Miami had 2 back-to-back games of like 9 of 37 from 3 where they just couldn't knock it down. I could be wrong. We'll see what happens.
I have a feeling that's what's going to happen just because of how good Milwaukee is on the defensive end. I think they're going to disrupt those young guys enough, Hero and Duncan Robinson in particular, because those guys, I think they're going to get in their heads. They're inexperienced. They're young guys. They haven't been here in this situation. I don't think anybody's going to get in Jimmy Butler's head. I don't think anybody's going to get in Bam's head. Jay Crowder and Iguodala have both been pretty far in the playoffs as well. I don't know if anybody's going to get in their heads. Dragic has been, he's been in the playoffs as well.
Better, yeah.
So I don't, but I think those young guys, I think they will have a couple of bad games as good as Milwaukee is, especially with those wing defenders. Somebody like a Middleton on one of those guys.
Right.
Shut him down, I think.
You can't get inside Jimmy Butler's head. The only thing that's going on in Jimmy Butler's head is that damn commercial, the song from the commercial. That's like when I look at Jimmy on the court, I just assume it's playing in his head the whole game.
It probably is.
I can't look at it any other way.
It probably is. Let's close things out. Most improved player, Brandon Ingram. I think that's what we both predicted. We talked about it a while back. Very, very well deserved. Obviously, had the just massive jump here this season from his sort of rough times in LA. He was not great in LA, and then he goes over to New Orleans, gets away from the noise, does a lot of work in the offseason, comes in here, puts up good scoring numbers, and eventually leads himself to an all-star game. And just all around, he had a very, very good season, is very deserving of this award. I think the sort of way that Luka was third, obviously, in the voting there, I think that doesn't come as a surprise to anybody. But I think Brandon Ingram very, very much deserved this thing, and I'm very happy for him.
Yeah, and I mean, coming from someone like myself who watched Ingram from his rookie year with the Lakers, I remember being like kind of concerned. Like I try not to get down on rookies too much because they are rookies, but at the same time, I remember watching him before LeBron. Like there was no pressure really. And I just remember being like, wow, I don't know if this guy's going to make it more than a couple of years. He's too skinny. He's not aggressive. Yeah. He seems very passive out there. And he's come a long way. I mean, he's really grown. It does help that he's like out of the LeBron thing from last year. He's kind of free to run a little bit more of the offense. But, he did well. His regular numbers were up. Obviously, the scoring was good. He not only was like the scoring up, but like there were a lot of takeover games where like you turn it on and he was just like, he was the guy hitting buckets down the stretch in the fourth, not Drew, not Zion when he was back. Like it was the Brandon Ingram show in the fourth, which not everybody can do that. So you got to give him credit for that. For the nerds out there, the advanced numbers were up considerably, like not just like a little bit. Like his PER was up, his win shares, his VORP, all the good stuff that the nerds love. Like that was all good too. So just across the board, he was really good. I think he's developing into a good defender. He's not quite at like the Tatum level, but like he's got that wingspan that can just really bug you. So I think he's on the rise there. So I'm excited to see what he does from here on out. But well deserved. We had a lot of good candidates this year. I mean, him, Bam, Luka, you name it, and they were all really, really good. So it was a tough competition, but that's what we like. I'd rather see a really close race with multiple favorites as opposed to just a runaway. So good for him, and we'll see what happens next year in New Orleans.
Yeah, definitely congrats to him, and that'll bring us to a close for this episode. I'm ready to go watch the closing minutes of this Milwaukee-Miami game, watch that fourth quarter. Social medias are down there. Jordan's going to be holding down the fort the rest of the week. I'm not here Wednesday or Friday, so the show might not be back by next Monday. I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens.
We'll see if I haven't lost it yet.
It might be just an hour of straight Lakers rants for the next couple of days, so just be prepared for that.
You caught me.
But be sure to follow Nuts and Bolts Sports on all our social media as well as on the website. You're going to get us dingy. All right, that'll bring us to a close, guys. Thanks everybody who joined us, and we'll be back here.